2 games into the Mets series against the Dodgers, and these teams have played each other to a draw. Who's going to win this series? We're going to talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And for those of you who have stayed up for these games the last couple of nights, we've been treated to great baseball games. And these are games that really could go either way. 2 teams battling out in it, inning by inning by inning. Great defense on each side, good pitching, really tough, hard-fought at-bats. The Mets come out on top on game 1 in the extra innings. Game 2, of course, fiddling, they lose in extra innings. It's just been that close. But you have to respect the fight for the Mets. They were out of this game early. I mean, you thought they were at least, because Tylor Megill had a brutal first inning. The Mets gave him a lead. Starling Marte got a base hit out of the 2-hole. Pete Alonso comes up with a runner in scoring position as Marte advanced on a wild pitch. And with 2 outs, Alonso gets a knock that drives in Marte. So the Mets are up 1-0 before Megill toes the rubber. But he had a brutal first inning. Strikes out Shohei Ohtani, which was a nice start, but then gives up a base hit to Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman gets him for a double. Jeff McNeil makes an error on the transfer of the cutoff. Betts scores. Freeman gets to advance to third. He would score on a ground out, and that was after a walk. So it was a walk after the double by Freeman, then a ground out. And then with the runner still on, Max Muncy gets Megill for a 2-run homer, and just like that, 4-1 Dodgers. At that point in the game, I'm thinking, man, is Tylor Megill going to get knocked out of this game early? What's that going to mean for the Mets pitching staff? Is Megill now going to get sent down after all because this bullpen's going to be in dire straits? I'm going to all of these bad scenarios in my head, because how often do you see Megill get off the mat after giving up 4 runs in the first inning? But credit to him, he was, in a weird way, unbelievable after giving up the 4 runs. I mean, he dominated after that first inning, really settled in. You have to give him a ton of credit, because this team could not have withstood him going out in the 3rd inning. I mean, they would have just been out of the rest of this series, and who knows what the ramification would have been throughout the rest of this week on this West Coast trip. Instead, he buckles down, gets the final out of that first inning. That starts a string where he retired 9 batters in a row and 16-17 to finish off his day, gets the Mets through 6 innings, allowed those 4 runs on 4 hits, 3 of them coming in the first inning, as well as the 1 walk. But from that point on, it was 1 double that he gave up, and that was it. Struck out 7 on the day, got up to 105 pitches, really saved the bullpen. I'm going to talk about his start a little more in the next segment as I sort of give you the latest state of the Mets pitching staff. But for Megill, he keeps the Mets in there and ends up out pitching Clayton Kershaw, who gave up that run in the first. Then in the 3rd inning, Francisco Lindor gets a leadoff single. After Starling Marte grounds out, Juan Soto blasts his 11th home run of the season, cutting the deficit to just 1 run. That's now 5 games in a row where Soto has got an extra base hit. Now, there was still some bad at-bats later on in the game from Soto, but he is definitely on the way to really turning the corner and hopefully turning in a season that is really impressive still, because he's going to have a really strong finish to the year. He's still got 4 months to salvage things after his rough start. And you look at the numbers overall, 11 home runs, not too bad. Not sure how many RBIs he's at, but still, that was a big home run for Soto. He also made a really good play, caught a ball in foul territory going over that sidewall there. So I thought Soto had a couple of nice moments. 5th inning, Francisco Lindor draws a 1-out walk. Max Muncy makes an error on a hard-hit ground ball off the bat of Starling Marte. Just lets it go through his legs. That puts a couple runners on for Soto. Here was one of the bad at-bats. He pops up to Mookie Betts at short, but Pete Alonso came through in the clutch again with 2 outs, delivers an RBI double to score Lindor. Brandon Nimmo then beat out an infield single that he hit to Freddie Freeman, but it was one of those balls that Freddie let get to him and sort of a lazier toss to first, and Nimmo just beats Kershaw to the bag. That allows the Mets to get their 5th run. Also knocked Kershaw out of the game at 4 2/3. So really good job by the Mets against Kershaw. Megill holds on to that lead in the 5th and the 6th innings and went through the teeth of the Dodgers lineup to do it. Struck out Shohei Ohtani again, got Mookie Betts to line out for the final out of the 5th inning. Then Freddie Freeman leads off the 6th, grounds out. He strikes out Teoscar Hernandez and then gets Will Smith to fly out to finish his day. So again, great effort by Megill. Brandon Waddell, who is back on the roster. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, all the different maneuverings the Mets made. But Waddell comes in, gives the Mets a scoreless 7th, did walk a batter, but overall a solid inning from him. And then we get to Reed Garrett in the 8th, going up against the top of the Dodgers lineup, and he was extremely impressive. He walks Shohei Ohtani, then he gives up a base hit to Mookie Betts. So he's in a bad spot, a pass ball, which was a real mistake by Francisco Alvarez trying to frame a pitch that they just shouldn't have. Allows both runners to get in scoring position with nobody out. And who's up? Freddie Freeman. He strikes out Freddie Freeman. And I've had this take. I talked about it when the Mets faced the Dodgers last time. To me, Freddie Freeman is the best hitter on the Dodgers. And it sounds insane to say it, but I feel like it's not even close. Maybe it's just the at-bats that Ohtani has had against the Mets. And I'm not watching him every day. But it feels like you can pitch around Shohei Ohtani a little bit. And Ohtani, at times, might get himself out. Freddie Freeman, I mean, we've been watching this guy's whole career. I just never... It is the most uncomfortable I feel with any single hitter in Major League Baseball in the batter spots. And for Garrett to strike him out in that spot where Freddie is trying to do everything he can in a one-run game to just hit a sacrifice fly. But instead, Garrett picks up a huge strikeout. Then the one highlight of the game from Ronny Mauricio, we're going to talk about his season debut and what his role is going to be moving forward in the final segment today. But Ronny playing third base, gets a ground ball hit to him. I hate to knock Mark Vientos when he's down, but he was not making the play that Mauricio did. Mauricio makes a perfect throw home, completely collected. He was just not fazed at all by a pressured situation defensively. Get Shohei Ohtani out. They get him in a rundown. And so now you got your 2 outs for Garrett. Still, though, it's Will Smith coming up. And Will Smith, they kept on putting up the numbers. The guy's been hitting like well over 400 with runners in scoring position this year, and even better with runners in scoring position with 2 outs. He's just been so good in those spots, and Reed Garrett gets him fishing, strikes him out. So an outstanding performance by Reed Garrett, really showing the cojones to just come through in a very tough spot. Unfortunately, the Mets were not able to hold on to that 1-run lead the whole way through because Huascar Brazoban, who, got to give him credit, is pitching a back-to-back after throwing 32 pitches in the first game of this series. He gets ahead on Max Muncy, 1-2 count. They try to go the fastball up. Muncy was all over it. He crushed it to tie the game. 2-home-run game for Muncy. Brazoban from there, though, settled right in, struck out the next 3 batters, kept the game tied. Unfortunately, the Mets just couldn't score in the 10th inning. Bad at-bats by Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, but Tanner Scott looked much better in this game than he did in the first one. And then Brandon Nimmo grounded out, and so the Mets were unable to get that ghost runner across. Jose Butto comes on, and he gets Mookie Betts to fly out. He gets Freddie Freeman hit a fly ball on the warning track that Brandon Nimmo should have caught, but Nimmo gets turned around, and he's been great all year in left field, so I don't want to knock him too much. I haven't seen the post-game presser. I'm sure he owned up to it being a mistake on his end. He should have caught that ball, and then you never know. It might have gone to the 11th inning, but honestly, who knows if that would have been great for the Mets bullpen anyway. I don't know who was going to pitch after Jose Butto. I really don't. So bottom line, the Mets end up losing in extras. It's a frustrating loss because every loss is frustrating, but really, I shouldn't have even said it's a frustrating loss. To me, I wasn't even mad, actually. So scratch the frustrating part of it. It's a loss, and it's going to happen against a good team like the Dodgers. If the Mets had maybe gotten another insurance run across, they would have won the game with Brazoban in the 9th. Luis Torrens did give one a ride, a little bit of managerial maneuvering where you had an at-bat. I think it was in the 8th inning, but I could be wrong on that. But regardless, there was a runner on. You had the Dodgers go to a lefty to face Brett Beatty, who had been announced as the pinch hitter for Starling Marte when there was originally a righty on the mound. So they grab a lefty to face Beatty, and then Carlos Mendoza counters with Torrens to face the lefty, and Torrens, like I said, gave one a ride, just didn't quite get enough of it. That ball goes out, the Mets win. And that's just how it goes. So the Mets fought hard, lose this one, but the series is tied, and they were, that ball going over the wall or a different pitch to Muncy away from having won 4 of their first 5 games against the Dodgers this year. That's really impressive. All they got to do is split this series to win the season series against the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens next year. You got Griffin Canning on the mound for game 3. I want to talk about the state of the Mets pitching. I want to spend a little more time on what Tylor Megill did and go through the Mets' decision to option Max Kranick. We're going to get to all of that in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start to build wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Plus, managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever because you can track both shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Let's talk about Tylor Megill's start a little bit more because he really was dominant after that first inning. And you look at the bread and butter for Megill in this game, his slider was nasty. And it's evident when you look at the whiff rate. He got 15 swings on his slider, 13 whiffs, a whiff rate of 87%. They just could not touch Tylor Megill's slider. He had 3 sliders called for strikes, 2 foul balls, no sliders put in play. And he was really going fastball slider for a lot of the night. His fastball had great life, touched 98, was averaging at 96. When Megill gets locked in like that, his stuff is as good as anyone's in this rotation. It's just a consistency. It's attacking the zone. But I felt like he was maybe nibbling a little bit in the first inning. And whether it was just taking on that pressure, or taking on that onus on himself after that of just, I got to get through innings. I can't let my team down. He found a zone and really was impressive. So you look at Megill standing on this roster, I think he's good for another couple turns. And really, I think the Mets' decisions with the IL today really sort of showed their hand that Megill was going to stay, because there was a world where the Mets could have used Mark Vientos' injury to option Max Kranick for a day, bring up whatever fresh arm was eligible, which was pretty much anybody on the Syracuse roster outside of Brandon Waddell and Chris Devanski. And they could have just grabbed whoever it was, or they could have added somebody to their roster. We went through all the options on the show yesterday, and that would have preserved Kranick. Instead, they choose to use that loophole on, being able to bring up a player. Because for those of you who aren't aware, if a player gets optioned to AAA, they have to spend 15 days in AAA before they can come back. But if they're replacing an injured player, that goes out the window. So again, because Max Kranick has options, the Mets did this once this year. They could have optioned him and then brought him back for Vientos the next day. Instead, they wanted Waddell back. So Waddell replaces Vientos. Ronny Mauricio replaces Kranick, because you can't have 14 pitchers on your roster. And now we won't see Kranick for a couple weeks. To me, that showed that the Mets were probably going to keep Megill, because in my eyes, if they were going to do that other maneuvering, right, where they would have just brought up a random arm, then they could have gotten, another arm up by then optioning Megill if he didn't have the best start. Instead, Paul Blackburn talked about it yesterday as well. He sort of understands that he's going to be pitching out of the bullpen at some point, and I think that point is coming. So from the Mets' vantage point here, you're going to keep Megill in the rotation for a couple turns. Blackburn's going to slide into a bullpen role that he will be in moving forward, because when Frankie Montas comes back, there's not going to be room for Blackburn. So you're going to get Blackburn settled into a bullpen role, and he could basically be taking the Max Kranick role, right? The guy that can pitch multiple innings. And Kranick hadn't been used too much. The past week, he hadn't pitched, and he has given up runs in 6 of his last 10 appearances. Now, I think Kranick was still throwing the ball well. I like him in this bullpen. But I understand what the Mets are doing here, because you look at where their roster is at now after these moves. Right now, currently, your 5-man rotation. Griffin Canning's going to start game 3 of this series, going up against Tony Gonsolin. It's going to be interesting to see how Canning throws the ball. Last couple starts have not been great. Hopefully, he has a bounce back. You got David Peterson to close out this series. Then it's going to be Kodai Senga and Clay Holmes to open up the series against the Rockies. And I would assume Tylor Megill is going to start that final game of that series. Okay, so that is your 5-man rotation right now. Your bullpen, Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Huascar Brazaban. Those are your 3 big money relievers at this point. Ryan Stanek obviously can pitch and leverage as well. Jose Budo on a good stretch lately. Jose Castillo, your left-hander. And Paul Blackburn is another guy that's going to be locked into that mix. Those are your 7 arms that are going to be in this bullpen moving forward. And so the 8th spot of the bullpen right now has to be an optionable guy. So for the time being, that's Brandon Waddell. That tomorrow could be Grant Hartwig, Rico Garcia, anybody, if they decide to just bring another arm in there just because they want someone fresh. And I don't know if Waddell, who is typically a starting pitcher, can go on back-to-back days. So we'll see how the Mets maneuver that last spot, but I think that's what they've set up with the moves they've made. And you look at Frankie Montas, the return is looming. So at this point in time, Tylor Megill has another start or 2. And then we'll see. Well, actually, at least 2 starts. So Montas pitched in Syracuse today. Got up to 61 pitches. Got hit really hard, though. Allowed 5 runs on 8 hits. Walked 1. Gave up 4 home runs. So not an encouraging start, but at least he's building up past 60 pitches. Colin Poche threw an inning in the middle of the game. Montas went out there for the 5th inning just to get that pitch count over 60. Gave up a leadoff homer, and then they go to Poche, who got through that 5th, and then Noel McLean finished off there. McLean. It looks like McLean. It does, but it's McLean. I gotta try to remember that. Just think Die Hard. McLean in the 6th inning came on, pitched 4 strong innings to close out that game, allowed 2 runs on 3 hits, 2 walks, struck out 6. So McLean continues to pitch well. He is up in the top 40 prospects at justbaseball.com, by the way. It's something I'll talk about later this week. The Mets are one of, I believe it's 4 teams that have 6 top 100 prospects on my company's list of the top 100. And I am not tilting any of those scales. That's all RM leading. So we'll talk about that later this week. But good outing from McLean. Getting back to Montas, now that he's at 60 pitches, next time out probably gets up to 75. Think he needs at least 2 more rehab starts so you get him completely built up. And also, you'd like him to have a good rehab start, to have some confidence once he does make his return. If it's only 2 more starts, he'll likely go on Sunday, then again next Friday on Friday the 13th next week. Theoretically, that lines him up to pitch on the 18th in Atlanta. But if the Mets want to, they can give him 1 more rehab start, maybe work out some kinks, then he'd be good to go on the 23rd, I think again against Atlanta. This time it would be at home. And that's when the Mets would need a 6th starter ahead of Kodai Senga. That's the next time they do need somebody to pitch in front of Senga. So theoretically, you look at Megill right now, he's got 2, maybe 3 turns in this rotation. And then you see the Mets might decide once the time comes to keep Megill and Blackburn in their bullpen. They might decide to roll the 6-man rotation for a little bit and keep Megill on the roster. So I would not rule Tylor Megill out yet because of that option. We have all been sort of thinking, okay, when's he going to get sent down? When is he going to get sent down? Dating back to spring training, he continues to defy all odds. Maybe he does stay in this rotation wire to wire, but there is definitely a lot of pressure on him right now. Just like Blackburn said, he knows the guys that are coming off the IL. He's not blind to it. I'm sure Megill does as well. So that's even more of a feather in his cap to understand the situation he's in understand the state of the pitching staff and knowing that, yeah, if I get out of this game in the third inning, I'm probably going to Syracuse. And he just had a great start. So I really wanted to give him a lot of credit for what he did tonight. Now you look at the rest of this series, Canning and Peterson. Can one of those guys win a game? Hopefully, if you split this 4-game set, job well done. The Mets were very close to doing that through 2 games. But overall, I don't think you can really be mad at what we saw tonight. Just a good team that got you. The final segment today, I want to talk about Ronny Mauricio. He made his season debut. How did he look in his at-bats? What will his role be moving forward? Cover all of that to close out the show in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks from the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways, and you get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So Mark Vientos is on the IL now. No surprise there. It was pretty clear that he pulled his hamstring and was not going to be a quick turnaround. So we still don't know the severity of the strain. Could be grade 2, and maybe it's not too bad. I mean, that's still bad, but not the worst thing where this could be a really serious pull, and then you have no idea when Vientos is coming back this season. A hamstring injury could be really rough. Could take a long time for him to return. I think the silver lining is this season really wasn't going very well, and it gives the Mets the opportunity to look at Ronny Mauricio right now to give Brett Beatty more run, but also it gives Vientos sort of a clean slate because so far this year through 53 games, he got a 678 OPS and only 6 home runs. Last year, he played 111 games in the regular season and he blasted 27 home runs. So he has not been the hitter that he was, and I don't think that just goes away and disappears, but I think he was pressing, and he was pressing for a long time. So maybe now you go for a couple months where you got to rehab that leg. You get back, you got to go through a rehab stint. You got to play in AAA and get some games under your belt to get your swing right. And ideally, by the time you get hopefully past the deadline, and it's not too much longer after that, Mark Vientos is in prime form for the stretch run, and that's your DH, and that's how the season ends for him. I hope that's how this thing goes because he's too impactful of a hitter to just fade entirely. But this very well could end up being a lost season for him. Not that I'm thinking that this injury is season ending, but if it does take a long time and other guys are grabbing roles and are performing well, it might be harder for him to find his footing. I don't think that this guy is done with the Mets by any stretch of the imagination. Still got plenty of years of team control, and he rose to some big moments last season, particularly the way he played in the playoffs. I think he'll still have a big piece of this. He'll be a big piece of this lineup down the stretch. But for now, you put him on ice and you give Ronny Mauricio a shot. So this is a chance to see what Mauricio can do. And it's hard not to root for him. This guy lost a year with the torn ACL, and it wasn't an easy rehab for him. I think you see the weight of that as prior to the game, they get a shot of him during the anthem and he's got tears flowing. This meant a lot for Ronny Mauricio to get this opportunity again in the big leagues because he got just a taste at the end of the 2023 season last year. I mean, Ronny Mauricio was set for a very big role in the 2024 Mets. He was ahead of Vientos on the depth chart going into spring training because of his positional flexibility. There was a good chance that he was ahead of even, a Brett Beatty at the time. I mean, he was coming off a great season in AAA in 2023. He didn't look incredible in 2020 in the cup of coffee that he had at the end of the season, but he did have flashes. His first hit 117 miles per hour off the bat, a double. Ronny Mauricio has loud tools. And so it's a guy that you're excited to watch every time he steps up to the box. This game, his at-bats weren't great, but I'm not going to knock him for that. First at-bat, kept the bat on his shoulder, a couple borderline pitches, one of them that should have been a ball, ends up in an 0-2 hole. Continues to lay off some pitches that were honestly nowhere near the zone, so he ends up in a 2-2 count. Fouls off a tough fastball in on his hands. Then he ripped a slider that was ball 3, is below the zone, but I still appreciate that he was on that pitch, hit it hard. That was 99.9 miles per hour. It was just hit right at Mookie Betts, which made it a Tylor-made double play ball. But I thought that, at least he hit the ball hard. Second at bat, he went fishing on a curveball in the dirt. Clayton Kershaw's been doing that for years, but obviously you saw some of the swing and miss in his game there. Third at bat, turned around to bat lefty against Ben Casparius and rolls one over. Fourth at bat, pops one up. So not a great day at the office, 0 for 4, but it's just one game. And he was tearing the cover off the ball in Syracuse, and I think you have to prioritize playing him over Jared Young. I've liked what I've seen from Jared Young. It's 17 at-bats, and he had one good game. Hit a home run and a double in that one game against the White Sox. Other than that, hasn't done much. Hasn't drawn a walk yet. He has 6 strikeouts and 17 at-bats, so he's striking out more than a third of the time. You got to lean into Mauricio more than Jared Young, and he'll play second. He'll play third. Brett Beatty is still your primary third baseman. Jeff McNeil is still your primary second baseman. Against a lefty starting pitcher, at some point they will plug in Luis Angel Acuna at times, but I think Acuna is sort of locked into a bench role right now, playing late in games. Not the best thing for his development. Hopefully, Jose Siri can make his return sooner than later, and then you can flip those guys so that Acuna can get regular playing time in the minor leagues, and Siri can be your speedster off the bench late in games, and then Ronny Mauricio can still fill that utility role that he's going to be filling right now in the meantime anyway. You don't need to sub out Jeff McNeil or Brett Beatty for defense. When you had the luxury of Acuna on your roster, you can do that, but you don't have to. So that's where I think this roster is eventually going, where if Jose Siri can return, and they say he's still not close, although he is going through baseball activities, that's going to at least allow Acuna to get back into the development phase, because right now it's not great for him to be filling this role, but it's a role he can excel at in the meantime. And so hopefully Siri can make it back before the All-Star break. And if nothing else, Acuna can get the second half of the season to maybe get his swing back in the minor leagues. Right now, until you get Vientos, until you get Winker, you got to play Mauricio. You got to see what you got. Now, Brett Beatty, again, should be out there most days at third. Jeff McNeil should be out there most days at second. But you can steal a start a week from both of them and stick Mauricio in the DH spot 2 times a week, and that's 4 starts. I mean, that to me is ideal. If Jared Young is relegated more to being a left-handed bat off your bench, fine. You got to see what you have here, because he's an exciting player. He could pop, and he could be a real difference maker, or he could really struggle, and if he does, you never know. He might be the guy that goes down for a Jose Siri, but you want to see him get a bunch of run before that point. And I also think there's just, while I was on the side of, hey, let Ronnie stay in AAA for a little bit and get his legs under him. Okay, well, now Vientos is out of the equation. And so that was one mouth you had to feed at bats to. Now that's gone. All right, see what you got. See what you got. Because there's not that much that Ronny Mauricio can gain developmentally in AAA. He's already played plenty of AAA baseball. Acuna played a year of it, but Acuna's a younger player. Acuna, it feels like there's still more in his game to be developed. Mauricio, it's kind of just see what he can do. So I'm excited that he gets this opportunity. I think you're going to see less playing time for Jared Young, and rightfully so, and maybe even less playing time for Acuna. If it is a 3-man rotation between Beatty, McNeil, and Mauricio at second and third base, and that's also factoring into your DH equation where Marte is starting against all lefties and against righties. Maybe some days it's Mauricio. Maybe some days it's Nimmo getting off his feet and Jeff McNeil slides out to left with Mauricio at second base. I think that is the best way that the Mets can deploy this roster. I think that's how they're going to. I imagine you're not going to see too much of Brett Baty over at second base. They'll still do that on occasion, potentially, if they want to keep him fresh there. But I also think that Baty is just a more valuable defender at third. And Mauricio still has his middle infielder chops to play second. So I think you'll see Mauricio when those two guys are in the lineup at the same time over at second base. And I don't think that Mauricio is a great defender, but he's a much better defender than Mark Vientos. I mean, this is a former shortstop. I mean, still technically can play shortstop. And he, if Acuna does ever go down, would be the backup shortstop on this roster, but he's not a elite defender. I think Brett Baty, honestly, is probably better at both third and second. That's just my take on it. I haven't seen Mauricio play too much. We'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong on that. But what you really are getting a chance to see with Mauricio is a guy that hits the ball really hard. And I can't wait to watch him in Colorado this weekend, because with the pitching that the Mets are going to face, I'd start Mauricio all 3 games, and he has a chance to hit some home runs that you're not going to forget. I mean, some monster shots. So it's going to be fun to watch him play. I'm excited for him. You see the emotion again on his face, when it came to the anthem, and even just talking to the media before the game. And also credit to him for putting in so much work that he was taking questions in English. I mean, he had the translator there, and there were some questions where a little more complex he would answer in Spanish and the translator would fill in. Other times, he would listen to what the translator, said as far as getting to hear the question in his native language, but then he would answer in English. And I thought that was, kind of a cool thing to show, something he'd been working on as he was going through this process of getting back on the field. So a good story for the Mets. Hopefully he could play a nice role here, but right now I still feel great about where this team's at. We'll see what they do for the rest of this series against the Dodgers. And if nothing else, you could probably steal some games in the back end of this week against the Rockies anyway. So that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on social media, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.